Hello, everyone. Welcome. I have you all muted at this point. Welcome to SDCOE's Business Service Positions in Education presentation. You have probably seen Adina and myself in multiple presentations now. I'm the Director of Teacher Effectiveness and Preparation, and Adina Sullivan-Marlowe is Coordinator for Teacher Effectiveness and Preparation. And this is the third of a three-part series on non-teaching positions in education. So today we're going to talk about business service positions in education, and we have with us Mr. Mike Simonson. He is our Deputy Superintendent and Chief Business Officer for San Diego County Office of Education. He comes to SDCOE with a background and experience within school districts as well. The county office structure is slightly different from district structures when it comes to business services, but he has just a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience in this area. And so I'm going to actually, before I pass it on to Mike, a couple things. We do encourage you to ask questions. So even during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat pod to ask your questions. Adina and I will be monitoring that chat pod, and we will make sure that your questions get answered before you leave today. And then once the presentation is done, then if you would like to unmute yourself to ask any other questions, feel free. But for now, we would ask that you use the chat pod. And then lastly, the meeting is being recorded. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Mike.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. Got to start off with a little bit of housekeeping first, though. So currently I have 5 people working from home or distance learning in my house, and the only place to go for some peace and quiet and not get interrupted is my RV. Well, guess what happened this morning? The AC went out. So yes, I am baking right now. It's not just the camera. It is me frying here. But hey, anyway, thanks for having me today. Was not part of the last 2, so maybe some of what I say is going to be repetitive. We'll go through, we've got a lot of things that goes on in business services. So we'll kind of go through who does what kind of schooling or credentialing you might need or certificate. And then as there are any questions, just let me know, and we'll get them all answered for you today. And during the heat, yeah. So again, going back to, and I apologize if this was covered, there's generally, well, there's two classifications of employees in school districts. Certificated, which is any position that requires a license or a special credential to do. So your certificated staff are your teachers, librarians, counselors, assistant principals, your administrators, and then everyone else is classified. So that doesn't mean that there's not specialized training that people go through or advanced training. It just means that it's not a requirement. I have a certificate as a chief business officer, but I would not need that. If I didn't have it, I still could do this work. So it wasn't a special license. So let's just dig in, because this is super fun stuff, right? We're going to talk about accounting and food service and all sorts of good things. So let's just start right off with at a school district. And there's some differences, as Shiva had mentioned, between what goes on in a school district and what goes on in a county office, because we have additional responsibilities in assisting districts. So the first one I think we'll start with, though, is your finance department. These are your accountants. These are the people who are doing journal entries, their accounts payable, their accounts receivable, they're building budgets, they're managing the money at school sites or the district office. Give you an example. So we'll talk about Escondido High School District quite a bit, because that's the district I came from. So we had 7,000 kids in Escondido. We had 1 director of finance and then 3 support staff. So it's not a huge department. But that's about the size of that. And again, all of these folks have gone to school to do some type of accounting, whether it be an AA or or all the way up into master's degrees. It is a lot of math, and if you don't like math, then the finance and accounting department is not the place you want to be in school business. Next, we have common in there. Common department is going to be your purchasing and procurement. That is something that I would say that anybody can learn. It doesn't necessarily have to be some type of a specialized program. It is very technical, though, in terms of ed code and following the process for where we have some special processes that we need to go to procure things because we're spending taxpayer money. So there has to be some guarantees that go along with that, and it's very technical. But again, it's something that if anybody was interested in, it would be something that could be learned very easily. So again, to show you a little bit of reference with Escondido, we had a director of purchasing, 2 buyers, and a clerical position. So there's about 4 people in that division as well. And I know for those of you who were on last week, I know Terry joined and talked about IT. More common than not, your IT department falls under business services at a district office. It is separate here at the county office just because it is such a massive department, and they got to make sure that the internet and cybersecurity and all those things are up and running, not just for the county office, but also for all the districts and charter schools that we support. So I won't go too far into depth in IT because I know Terry talked about it, but that's also, again, very common to be in the business services. Then you have your food service, child nutrition services. There you're going to have a director who's going to manage all of the technical program pieces, because now you're dealing with the federal government, the USDA, and all their rules and regulations that go along with serving kids. There'd be an accounting position in there, because there's a reimbursement process, again, through the federal government. So there's some accounting, and then there's going to be a clerical person in there as well. Generally not a very large department. 1 to 2 people is what I am used to. But then, of course, you have a lot more food service handlers. So the people who are actually out there serving the food on the school sites. So in our 2-person department in Escondido, I think there was 55 food service workers then who would go out and, serve the kids. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner is what we've moved into now. I will tell you from a general standpoint, your food service worker is basically, it's a minimum wage job, and they're usually 4 to 4.5 hours a day. So most of the people that I see in that are either working a second job, or they're retired and just like being around kids. But it's not that high up in the salary schedule. I will tell you though, a lot of other people, if it's of interest, there are a lot of our food service workers who primarily do it just for the insurance benefits. And so if you were going into that arena at a district, you'd want to make sure, because a lot of them, there's minimum amount of hours you need to work in a day to qualify for benefits. So that would just be something I would look at. But it is a huge benefit, health and welfare. Next, we have a facilities department. This is the construction department. If you've ever tried to build a school building or any type of school structure that houses kids in the state of California, there is about 10 feet of red tape you got to cut through. A number of different statewide organizations that needs to be stamp of approval on everything from your drawings to actually every day when something's being built, there's an inspector on the site who's checking off, yes, you did this, yes, you did that. So that is navigating a lot of red tape, as I'd mentioned. And I have seen more people from outside of education get into the facilities part of education than in any other area, because again, it's something that you can pick up rather quickly. There's a lot of support, especially here in the county. There's a lot of great networks for that. There's a lot of statewide organizations that can help. And so that's one area where I do see a lot of people who, whether it be a second career or a third career, get into the facilities part of things, especially if you're someone who likes construction. Okay, moving down the list, maintenance and operations. So there's two. This is usually your largest department in business services. You have custodians who do your regular cleaning every day, and then you have skilled maintenance workers who could be a plumber, an electrician, but they have some, I would say at a minimum, some level of handyman background to be able to, if the sink doesn't work, to fix that. If they need to build up a wall because it's too loud in one classroom, or the air conditioner doesn't work. That's what a lot of those skilled maintenance workers have, areas of specialty expertise. And I'll just as a note, my experience with M&O is that those folks stay in that business for years. And it's a 35, 40 years is what I see people working in that. So I think they like it. I think they like, again, the benefits that come along for working for a school district. And so they stick with it. Okay, transportation. These are our bus drivers. The transportation, there's going to be a director of transportation and a scheduler. So somebody who's going to determine what route and when you pick people up. And then you have your drivers. So many people find this interesting when I say this, that oftentimes one of your drivers is going to be the highest paid classified person in the district. And it's the way that's usually set up is you are on a route for 4.5, 5 hours a day. But then when you've got the football games and the excursions and the field trips and all that stuff, they have the opportunity to pick up extra hours. And so the max amount of time they can drive in any 24-hour period is 16 hours. So you can get into the overtime very quickly. And again, they're very well paid. They can be. If you want to put the hours in, then they certainly can be. And then we have some other stuff at our school sites that all the support staff. If anybody's familiar with ASB, that's your Associated Student Body. That's the kids raising money for their dances and for whatnot. And there's got to be a clerk there, someone to manage that process and manage those funds. And occasionally I will throw in there, I don't know, Shive, if HR has been part of this yet, other than you, but there are about 50% of the time you'll see the HR department as part of business services. And then business services now becomes called administrative services. So if you ever see administrative services, it's both business and HR in there. So let's talk about, that's basically a school district. That's what you're going to see in an entire school district. A little bit different at the county office. So we have that accounting that we talked about for a school district that still exists. That whole department still exists for a county office, but then we add one. We add an external business group that goes out and takes care of all the district. We review budgets, we approve budgets. Those are all accountants that are in that. I will share with you there. It's a very technical level of work. We have our maintenance department, just like you would at a school district. We have a legal department in business services, which you may or may not have. We have a charter school division in business services to manage the process of approving, renewing, and the appeals of charter schools, and then purchasing, all that other stuff. So a lot of similarities, a lot of good work. And how about we start with some questions?
Mike, I have a question for you. You've mentioned benefits a few times now. Can you expand on that? When you say benefits, does that go beyond health benefits? And what does that look like?
Absolutely. So there are, yes, there's health benefits that are available to employees. Again, a lot of times it depends on how many hours that you're working in a day. But then there is a built-in retirement benefit for whether you're credentialed employee or a classified employee. It is a requirement. If you work for a school district, you have to participate in either one of these programs. And so I'll give you an example. As a teacher, the day you start teaching, you are putting 10% of your paycheck into this, what's called a defined benefit. So it's a pension. When you are, and then your employer puts in about 20%. So there's about 30% in retirement benefits right off the bat there. If you are a classified person, it is 23% is what the county or the employer puts in, and it's about 6.5% is what the employee puts in, plus they're paying 6.5% into Social Security. So, you know, somebody, well, my dad, when I was 18, he's like, hey, you need to start putting 10% of your income away. That's how you end up retiring. Well, that's the best part about working in schools is that it's built in for you. So you're going to have that retirement. And then the way it's paid out is you got to be a certain age. So you can't start collecting until you're 55. If you're on the certificated side, it's 50. And then there's a gradual scale of getting more or less depending on how old you are. It's a fun little formula. Does that answer your question, Shiva?
It does. And then what about salary ranges? You mentioned these different positions. Does each one have a different range?
Yes, they do. So generally, let's talk about accounting. Oh, accounting positions first. That was my fan. Oh, roasting now. The accounting positions entry level is going to be about $40,000. You go up to your director. Director of finance is somewhere going to be between 120 and 150 right now. And you know, if you're in a huge organization like LA Unified or San Diego, those numbers might be a little bit higher, but generally speaking, that's that range. And that would be the same for purchasing. All of that staff and those departments are going to be making somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000. Now, remember, this is foreign to a lot of people, but we have salary schedules in school districts. So every year you work, you get a raise, and we also do raises that can be negotiated. So your starting salary is going to be very different from where you end up if you've been in the organization for a while. IT, excuse me here, I gotta get some water. IT is similar to your director of finance. They're going to be in the 130s to 150 range as the director. The support staff are going to be in the low 70s to 80s. Let me take a sip here. And then pretty much as you go on, that's all the range of those directors. So maintenance and operations, facilities, transportation, food services, they're all going to be right around $100,000 as the manager and $40,000 to $50,000 as support staff.
And then is it the number of days, is that different from public sector, the number of days work?
Yeah, generally speaking, so we'll go going into the weeds here, aren't we, Shiva? You love the weeds. So if we're going to take a step back to the beginning of our chat here, there are really, I guess you could classify two different groups of employees who are not certificated. One is the group that work every day, 260 days a year. And then another is generally considered your school year folks. So the kids who are supporting, or the employees who are supporting kids while school is in session, they usually work a lot less, 180 to 190 days. And so obviously the more you work, the more days you put in, the more money you make. Versus people on a reduced schedule. Does that help?
Thank you. And the question in the chat is, which positions would be best for entry-level candidates? Are most positions 18 years and older? We do have some candidates at workforce.org who are 16 years plus, 16 years over.
You were cutting out quite a bit there. Let me read this here.
Sorry about that. I don't have my headset with me today. Which positions would be best for entry-level candidates? Are most positions 18 years and older? And do we take candidates who are 16 years and older?
Yeah, so 99.9% of everything, you got to be at least 18. There are some student worker positions that are kind of few and far between. Most of them are kids who go to the school already, and then they go help serve serve meals or clean up afterwards, and they might get an hour or so per week. I'm sorry, per day, tops. I don't know if there's something that would be best for entry level. I think it really depends on what your skill set and what your passion is. I mean, there's a ton of different things that you can do, but I would say if you don't like, hopping on Amazon and buying things, then you probably want to stay out of the purchasing department. So, then, like I said, there's a lot of folks start in maintenance. A lot of folks start as classroom assistants, which is a classified position. And once you're in the district, you get a much better idea of things you might want to do or have an interest in. So I wouldn't be able to point someone directly to hey, this is the best entry level position. You just really got to look at it, the job description, and see if it's something that interests you, and then that if it's something that meets your skill set.
Is there a particular time of year that folks should be looking, or do districts hire all year round for non-teaching positions?
Yeah, districts do hire. There'll be positions open year round. There are busier times than others. Generally, people, when they retire in June at the end of a school year, and the completion of another year. So there's a little bit of a rat in the snake's belly starting in about March, because there are more positions to fill. But then life happens to everybody. Somebody has to move out of state, or change in circumstance, and they move on, and we have to fill those positions.
Mike, I'm asking you all sorts of questions here, and everyone feel free to type in the chat if you have questions. But you've probably sat in on a lot of interview panels for these various types of positions. Do you have any words of wisdom or any advice around interviews, application, resume?
Yeah, so from the business service side of things, I would say the best advice is that if to find somebody to talk to that can give you the information about the job and what it all is going to entail, because it is so specialized, and the questions are going to be tailored to the specifics of a position. And oftentimes people apply not really knowing what it is, and then during the interview process, it becomes clear that the folks have absolutely no idea what it is that they're even applying for. So you really got to be prepared, just knowing, if it's a highly technical, following government code or ed code, just know some of those the key terminology in working with schools. And if anybody was trying to interview, I would be happy to send me an email. I'd be happy to have a conversation with anybody anytime.
Does that mean it's okay to share your email address?
Totally fine.
Okay, we'll put that in the chat. And then let me see, going back to talking to someone and some of the key terms, I think I would just add to that usually the job description has key terms in it. So you can bet that the interview questions are going to tie back to what the job description says. Wouldn't you say, Mike?
Yes, definitely read the job description and the postings, and you will see keywords there. And if you don't know what it means, those would be good ones to look up and be prepared to answer. So I did see somebody's asking about the classroom assistants, and so that is one of the school year positions. So it's generally 180 to 200 days. And I say the range there because if you are a special ed classroom assistant, they have an extended school year that they might be, that they would be working. And that usually comes out of the ed services department. So not the business services, but your educational services. And the salary range is they're usually 4 to 6 hour positions, and the salary range is somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. But again, that's a great place to just see if you like kids, if you like being around kids and helping kids, then it's a great entry position to really get an idea of what else the possibilities are on a school site.
There was a question earlier about cybersecurity team and how large of a team that is, and I had responded that or how large of a department that is, the IT department, but that really depends on the size of the district. So Escondido High School District, where you came from, you said 6,000 students. How large was that IT department? How much staff did they have?
So at Escondido, it was about 7,000 kids over 4 high schools. So we had a computer tech at each site. So that's four of them. There were 2 people, kind of network security guys at the district office, and then the director. So it wasn't a huge department, but when you look at the county office, it is a massive department because it's the enterprise business systems, cybersecurity, the internet, making sure our software to pay people works. So it's a much bigger animal at the county office. And then again, because we are providing support to our districts. So I see any new roles that have been created. Yeah, there have been a couple right now, primarily since we're not all back. We are on a staggered limited schedule right now as to when we can be in the office, but we now have to have screeners, right? We have to have the folks who are waiting outside the gate to check your temperature, ask you if you've had any of the symptoms, sign you in, and then give you a badge that says you're clear for the day. That's really well. And then we've also had, with all this planning and trying to figure out how to come back, some people's primary work has moved, I would say, to really focusing on reopening plans. What percentage of a school district is classified positions? I'll tell you from a money standpoint. How about that? So your teachers, your certificated teaching staff usually makes up about 60% of the entire budget. Your classified staff, the average is about 27% of a district's budget. And then your management staff is about 13%. So that gives you an idea of the size of each one of those groups. It's completely upside down at the county office. We have 200 teachers total, about 200 teachers, and we have close to 600 classified staff members. And again, that's a big reason for that is because we provide so much service to the districts that we just have a huge staffs. What else you got there for me, Shiva?
Let me see. There were some questions about EdJoin. So there is a EdJoin presentation recording that's in workforce.org in the presentations library there. So feel free to check that out. But EdJoin, do you want to speak to that at all, Mike?
Yeah, sure. That is generally speaking the #1 place for anybody who wants to work in a school district would go to look. I can't think of ever not posting on EdJoin. You might use other areas, like if you're looking for a facilities person, well, then you might go into the general contractors job boards in addition to EdJoin. But they're all there. You can search by geographical area. You can search by job title. You can search by school district. And I think it's really easy to navigate, and it's very easy to then you complete your application online, and it just gets submitted right to them. The biggest thing I have a problem with is forgetting my password to get back in. So. But yeah, that would be the site, and I see the edjoin.org is listed up there for anybody.
Is there a hard to fill position out there where if somebody has that skill, you would definitely encourage them to go on EdJoin and look for a certain position?
Yeah. So the hardest position to fill right now is director of finance. That is a skill set that a lot of people who have it go into private industry, whereas working for a governmental agency. But that is the hardest position right now to fill. A lot of maintenance positions, surprisingly to me, they used to be able to have a long list of candidates for your maintenance positions, but those are getting difficult to fill as well. And again, those go from anything from being the director to custodian to skilled maintenance worker, all sorts of opportunities there. And I would venture to bet that if we looked on EdJoin right now, we would see probably at least one position at the county office.
Mike, this is really educational for me. I have another question for you. This is one I hear a lot from certificated folks. That is that we're hearing about budget cuts in education. Is that going to impact these classified positions, or do you see that there will be continued openings?
Well, the work is still going to need to get done. So there's still going to be openings and positions. But what happens, about 10 years, now nobody could have predicted COVID on this one, but it was 10 years ago, 2008 through 2012. Everybody probably remembers that. Prior to that, it was the dot-com bust in the early 2000s. And so the overall size of staff shrinks. It just has to. One of the things that's generally attached with a recession is kids leaving the state for a more affordable place to live. And therefore, when there are less kids, there are less adults needed to serve them. There will always have to be positions, though, no matter if money is tight or not, because the work is going to have to get done. So you can't just say, we're not going to do this anymore and not hire somebody into it. So I think it's going to be, generally, it's going to be a tough year, but it doesn't mean there won't be opportunities.
If someone's interested in exploring different positions, is there such thing like is with substitute teaching? Sometimes if someone wants to explore teaching, they'll become a substitute teacher. Is there anything like that in business services for classified positions?
Yeah, we do have a sub list. It's generally in maintenance and operations, but it also is often, remember the accounting is so technical that we have, and when it gets to be the busy time of year, oftentimes we will hire people who have retired to come back in and do short-term work. But there's other than you could be a sub classroom assistant, right? That's, if you just want to try that out, you can do substitute clerical. It's really easy. You get your name on the list, and generally they have you come in and test for a position. So if it was, let's say if it was clerical, there might be some typing requirements that go with that. But then you're on the sub list, and you're not gaining any seniority, and you're not putting in towards your retirement in that. But it's an opportunity to get to know people, and when somebody likes you, and then a new position opens up, and they think, oh yeah, this person's been doing great. So it gives you a little inside help if people know you.
I'm curious to find out from everyone here. You could just type in the chat. Is there a specific position that folks here you're interested in, or a background that you're coming to this with? So feel free to type into the chat. We'd love to know who our audience is. Should have asked that in the beginning. And
to go back, Shiva, again, it's not all technical work. There's still people who need to organize and manage calendars and answer phones and process just the normal things of business. that are all skills that I believe can be learned rather easily. It's not as if you're going to need to go and, you know, try and get a different degree or an AA or a bachelor's degree. So there are a lot of those positions that are also worth looking at.
So we have accounting, nutrition.
Yeah, nutrition is almost always hiring. In the child nutrition department. If you're interested in being a food handler, you can probably find a job any day of the week on EdJoin. And again, you know, part of that reason is because they're part-time position, 3 to 5 hours. But like I said, sometimes it's just getting a foot in the door and getting to know people that makes the difference. Yeah, there are the finance, procurement. Those are all. I'm sure there's tons of positions right now. Just gonna have to go on EdJoin. I don't know all the specifics in the county that are open. Yeah, the schedule is very stable. It's most people come in. It depends on if you're doing the breakfast or lunch or you're doing both. So, you know, you have people who will come in from 7 to 11, and then you might have people who come in from 10 to 1 or 10 to 2. So pretty consistent schedules. Kids eat lunch and breakfast at the same time every day. So you can pretty much count on a regular schedule.
The uncomfortable pause, waiting for questions, always uncomfortable.
I'm just trying not to melt.
I know, I do apologize. I feel bad for your AC issues there. So there's a question about salary range. I'm just going to jump in and say that when you go on to EdJoin and you look at different positions that are available, they will usually post the salary range. If you don't see it there, then you would go to the district's website, and under human resources or personnel services, depending on what they call their department, you can find salary schedules. So you can find more information about that in the EdJoin presentation, which is in workforce.org /on demand. So feel free to check that out. There we go. It's in the chat pod there. Any other questions before we wrap this up? Mike, that was very comprehensive. Thank you so much for the great overview. This meeting was recorded, and we will make sure that we share it with Workforce so that it does go onto the on-demand page. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We are the Teacher Effectiveness and Preparation Team at SDCOE. And let me see, do I have our contact information? There you go. You could check out our website at sdcoe.net /teacher prep. And you can get my contact information, Adina's contact information there, and we can answer any further questions that you may have. But Mike, thank you. I know you're melting.
Thank you for having me. And as I mentioned, if you need anything, anybody, anytime, just send me an email.
Much appreciated. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.